Hello there, beautiful. How are you doing today? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr, and welcome back to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Opera Omnia. Today's video, we're going to be talking about one of my favourite characters in the game, and also another favourite character for a lot of people in this game, as we're going to be talking about Faris's banner and the raid that comes along with her, as well as Agrias and the update she's going to be getting. Now, we also get Garnet come back here with her sort of force enhancements, and also an additional benefit of having an extra banner that you can get her BT back on. So if you want to learn more about all of that and the rest, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Of course, before we get started, don't forget to check out all of my social media links down below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and Patreon. Over on Twitch, I'm not streaming much at the moment, but that's because by the time this video comes out, I'm actually going to be over in the US for TwitchCon. So if you happen to be in the San Diego area and want to come and say hello, then it'd be lovely to meet you guys. But for that reason, I'm obviously not streaming much at the moment, but I am still going to be releasing videos all while I'm out there, so definitely don't worry about that. And of course, over on Patreon, I do shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video. Today that person is going to be Tillatron, who has been a supporter of mine for a long time now, and has Alize on their title card, and we all know how much I love Alpha now and Alize. So a massive thank you goes out to you, Tillatron, and to all of my patrons for supporting this channel. It means the world to me to enable me to keep on doing what I'm doing, so thank you very much. And if you would like a title card made just for you, alongside a plethora of other benefits, then perhaps you'd like to consider joining in with Patreon as well. And of course, last but not least, don't forget to check out all those other content creators and resources out there for DFFOO as well. So we're going to take a look at the banner first things first, as we always do on these videos. And so the banner itself is going to contain Faris, her brand new FR, and obviously the rest of her kit. It's going to be another shot at getting T for BT, although as said previously, we're actually going to get a second banner for this particular event that's going to contain Garnet BT for those who perhaps didn't pick her up the last time and happen to have T for BT already. And then Agrias is going to return, and then Garnet's obviously going to return with the rest of her kit. Now, Garnet doesn't get any sort of new toys or anything from this particular banner, but what she does get is force enhancement points, which are beneficial to her, and she's still pretty darn good. Like, is she like the only character like she had been for the entirety of late Lufenia, and even in some ways in earlier Shinryus? No, there's a lot of really powerful support characters out there now, but she's still really good. Like, she doesn't necessarily need an FR, and she goes very well with Faris as well, so that's something to consider. And she has Alexander in her BT. We still have that, whereas the JP didn't have that at this point in time with Garnet. It wasn't until she got her BT and FR later on that we got access to that in JP. But she's still good, so don't worry about that. So we're going to start by taking a look at Agrias. So big shout outs to Mediu for their translations here. Over in JP, they actually got Arden and Garland's reworks here as well, but we're probably not going to be getting them until nearer the end of the month, when I imagine we'll get with the Crevasse event that's happening. So let's take a look at Agrias. So Agrias gets additional HP dumps across the board, which you would expect at this point, and the main role with Agrias is crowd control. So she's very much somebody inclined to confuse, paralyze, silence, all these things that stop your opponent from attacking while they're still able to take turns. So if enemies are resistant to those kinds of things, obviously she's not going to do very well. But in the very, very vast situations where they're not immune to those sorts of things, she's actually gotten quite a nice upgrade here. So not only does she provide those things, she also provides like nice auras for the party, some HP regen as well. Knight's Pride, which is what gives her her buff that provides all of those auras, is now a triple HP dump with splash damage. Judgment Blade, which is an AoE attack that inflicts paralysis on a chance unless you use her AA, which guarantees the paralysis, has now got 3 HP dumps in it. Her LD now has an extra use, which is really nice, especially considering it's 5 HP dumps across the board, and it gives her access to her Faded Molly bravery attack, which is a triple HP dumping attack now, and also gives you 2 turns worth of the Faded Molly debuff, which is confusion, so they can't do anything, and also makes it so that they take additional bravery damage. It's also got like more recast gauge that you get from bravery attack, because until now, well, I say until now, until more recently or more recent reworks, bravery and HP pluses didn't really do the EX gauge all that much, so it's nice to see that that's still the case here. And yeah, additional use of Divine Ruination and additional turn from Faded Molly, really, really nice for Agrias. And then Agrias' C90 gives her extra HP dumps, so 4 HP dumps across the board on Hallowed Bolt, and also inflicts silence debuff like it always did. Not quite as great as, say, like paralysis or confusion, but still has its uses. Its recast gauge speed has gone up, and it doesn't consume an ability use next turn, which is actually great because it gives you access to more uses of her AA, which it guarantees the paralysis proc on her skill 2. So that's something that's worth bearing in mind. Honestly, a lot of nice stuff here for Agrias. Like, she's definitely picked up the pace here, and a lot of people have been crying out for more tactics representation. So it's nice to see that even though we don't have a lot of that still, what's here is nice. Ramza is still good, and now Agrias like definitely picks up the pace here with all of these different sort of crowd control procs. So now we can take a look at Faris, who is the main event, as it were, for this particular banner, and she gets her rework and a brand new FR here. So, I love Faris, one of my favourite characters in Final Fantasy history, absolutely adore her, so it's nice to see that she is worth more than just her cool abilities now, as her main role is as a debuffer and as a dispeller, so it gets rid of buffs and replaces them with nasty debuffs, which are still pretty strong to this day. However, she still retains the issue of taking up a lot of debuff slots, so bear that in mind if you're wanting to use her. So, her Water Whirl just gives her extra HP dumps, nothing too crazy there, and the same applies to Open Fire, and she gets more skill uses across the board. Open Fire is the ability that will inflict attack down, defense down, max bravery down, and poison, so those are, and they're all silver framed as well, so you need to bear that in mind too. Her LD now gets an additional use on it as well, and it has 4 HP dumps on it. She gets a buff from it, which just gives her some more like offensive stats, and she also inflicts a debuff on the enemies, which imperils the enemy for all of the elements that she uses, which are lightning, water, and wind, and makes it so their bravery is set to 0 every time they do anything. So, something that's useful to know there. The real meat of Faris's rework, though, is actually in her EX. Faris's EX was always very interesting, but it was never particularly good. So she summons her Dragon Sildra, or Sea Drake Sildra, if we want to be specific, and she'll do Thunderstorm, which is all 3 of the elements that I mentioned, and also gives herself a special effect that, after the enemy acts, would deal bravery damage and battery the party for the bravery damage dealt. The first problem is that it only lasted for 2 turns. The second is that it didn't do HP damage. Both of those things change with this rework, which is fabulous for her. So, the first turn, she gets a free turn, and that means that you can get to the plus versions of her skills really quickly. They don't actually make that much of a difference, to be honest, but it's still nice to have a free turn, on the first turn. And you get Sildra's Care for 6 turns now instead of 2. Which is fabulous because it means that the clunkiness of her kit is taken away, because by the time that that's run out, you'll be able to recast Thunderstorm and regain those stacks. Thunderstorm itself is now a 5 HP dumping attack, and then Whirlpool is now a triple HP dumping attack, which is pretty nice when you consider the fact that she automatically reduces bravery to 0 on any enemy that she's fighting. So you're guaranteed to get breaks on the enemies as long as they've actually tried to do anything and hit you, and even if they don't, they're still taking HP damage, which makes her a pretty competent off-turn damage dealer who happens to specialize in dispelling and debuffing at the same time. The issue with her is that she is locked to 3 elements, and from this point onwards, as we'll see with her event here, the elemental lockout content starts now, which means that if you are hitting an enemy for an element other than the one that you're supposed to be hitting them with, you will be hitting for 1s. And her being locked to 3 different elements is an issue, so that's something that you will need to bear in mind when using Faris. So of course she has an FR here as well. So the FR also mass dispels the enemies, also inflicts the debuffs that she would normally do. She's paired up with Waka, we don't have to talk about it. And the force time here is, I think, quite nice as long as you're in a position to be able to use it. When a turn passes with a water command selected or a water attack is triggered outside of own turn, and when a turn passes with an attack command selected based on the number of debuffs inflicted on the target. So, and you get party-wide water enchant out of it. In any environment where you're able to use Faris, so you're not elementally locked out from using her, this is actually pretty great. Like, if you pair her up with the likes of Core, or Gladio, or any other off-turn damage dealer, Kane, you're going to be getting procs off the force time pretty regularly, and pretty, like, these kinds of like off-turn build-ups are some of my favorite FRs to use. So to see that you've got a nice generic command, as long as you're able to actually inflict debuffs on the enemy, which there's up to 8 slots there. She takes up 5 of them, so that's not actually that difficult to do. And then you get 40% off of that, and then 5% off of every single like proc outside of her turn as well. So I think that while Faris is by no means a mandatory pick for people, I think there's enough here to want to play around with that could make for some very, very cool and very interesting party combinations. And the fact that she dispels and debuffs at the same time as doing all of these things gives her a niche that not many other characters like her have. So now let's take a look at the raid that's going to be coming along with Faris and Agrias, and this is the Crystal Armor raid. So when players have talked about elemental lockouts from a certain point, this is kind of where we're at with it. Basically, if you look at here at the elemental bravery damage resist except for the elements that Faris brings, so thunder, water, and wind, if you're dealing damage with anything other than that elemental damage, it is 1 damage. That's it. You know, Party Brave damage resist up 100%, it's just you deal no damage. So you have to deal damage with one of those elements. Well, I say you have to. There are other ways around it. You can use somebody like Charlotta's BT effect or Kate Sith's LD call so that you've got brave gains going off of everything, and that can be your way around it. Just bear in mind you're not going to be shaving a lot of damage off the enemies if you're going to do it that way, so you're going to be relying on poisons and such if you're letting the enemies take turns at all. Or you could use somebody like Setsa or Core, where you're guaranteed to be hitting for maximum bravery damage because of their own effects. There are ways around it, but honestly the easiest way to get around this kind of thing is gonna be single elemental enchantment. If you were to take a double enchant, let's use Ash as an example here, you have elemental like enchantment for lightning and holy when it comes to Ash. That's not going to work, because while you're dealing lightning damage, you're still dealing holy damage, so it's still going to be reduced. It absolutely has to be one of the elements that they're weak to. So you're better off, if you want lightning elemental damage, to take somebody like Kryl along. If you want wind, Fujin, or even Bards, if you're using Bards. Water, Garnet. Lightning, Garnet. There's lots and lots and lots of elemental sort of imperiler enchanters that will fit the mold for this kind of thing, so it's actually not nearly as bad as it looks. However, it does lock out a lot of characters that you may want to take going forward as well for other events like it. The only other mechanic that these guys really have is that after they've gained 40% of their force time gauge, they will start taking turns after every action you take, so this fight is very much encouraging off-turn damage. Past that, it's actually really easy. Like, I have seen solo clears of this with Faris, I've seen solo clears of this with Core. If you've got Core and Gladio, you've already won the fight, basically. If you wanted to do a more sort of just single target focused thing, taking somebody like Charlotta and Machina will work because of the brave gains going out the zoo. Kane will still work really well here because he doesn't lose bravery when he hits things. There's a lot of ways around this, and their HP isn't that high. There's 2 of them, and they have 85 million HP, which, if you've used like Tifa or anything, you're not going to struggle here. Tifa and a single target like enchantment call, you're just going to win. Like, there's no 2 ways about it. The actual attacks they do themselves aren't especially threatening. They don't do a huge amount. The main factor when it comes to them is the elemental lockout itself, as well as the fact that they jump turns. Past that, you're probably all good. So now, of course, it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard and tell everyone whether you pull on any banners or not. Big thank yous, of course, go out to all of my patrons here for casting their votes and their comments. I did ask people to lump all of their stuff together because obviously me going away meant that I needed to get everything consolidated in one place, and even then I still had to rush around to get a load of information for myself as well. So let's go into some numbers, shall we? Of the 100+ people we asked, 4% of people said that we're going to use gems on Faris' banner, 46% of people said we're going to use 100 or more tickets, 38% of people said less than 100 tickets, and 12% of people said no thank you. I would like Faris. Like, I actually really like Faris's rework. I used Faris a fair amount even when she wasn't considered particularly great with her LD, because, yeah, she was a call and all of that, but I just love her that much that I'm going to use her anyway. So I'm happy to see so many people actually wanting her this time around. So let's go into some comments here. Sergeant Tuffy says, Faris is getting deep tickets from me. I really like her. She was great in FF5 and always wanted to get good value out of her in OO. It's just a shame that she was resigned to being an LD call previously, even if she was one of the best ones. Well, no more. Her modern kit brings her right up to speed. The reworked EX makes her a proper off-turn damage dealer, and her FR is low-key really powerful in the right team compositions. Plus 50% on turn, assuming max debuffs, which is not difficult because Faris is in the party, and then 5% for every hit done off turn, one of which Faris is already doing herself with Whirlpool. It's a really fantastic hybrid FR when water isn't locked out. I just want to see Faris in the main party for a change. The best pirate on the roster deserves it. Also, Agrias C90 finally, 2-turn faded Molly. I couldn't agree more. Like, I do think that the period of elemental lockout time does last a while, but beyond that point, Faris is still really good, and the elemental lockout content doesn't last forever, and Faris is still solid beyond that. I do think that Faris's FR adds a lot of value to her kit as well. You could use her with somebody like Core's FR if you wanted to build up that kind of off-turn thing, but I just think that Faris is so much more flavorful in the way that she brings that along, and the sorts of debuffs you can bring along. You can max that out with you know, cool abilities, or something more sort of you know, consolidated with another character in your party. There's loads of ways of filling out her FR that make her really enjoyable to play for me. This next comment comes through from Treevoid, who, bless them, put all of their comments in one. So I wanted to make sure I formatted it correctly. But big shout out to Treevoid. Thank you so much for doing that. FF5 fan here, so getting Faris for sure. I'm so glad I'm not the only FF5 fan. Faris has a reputation of being a multi-elemental unit being released right at the gates of Elemental Lockout era. While this is true, we have a couple options in Charlotta and Setzer who can help us bypass this issue. Her FR leans well into off-turn team compositions, which she now becomes with her C90, a still just overhead buff now lasts for 6 turns, and has a triple HP attack with splash damage. Does she have a higher team setup cost compared to most other off-turn units? 100%. That doesn't mean you can't use her though, you just need to be aware that the team will have to be adjusted to accommodate for her elemental damage. Absolutely, 100%. Charlotta and Setzer and Kate Sith and stuff like that are gonna be really useful for this kind of content anyway, so there's no reason why they couldn't be used with the likes of Faris. It's absolutely like factual that having Brave Gains be your method of dealing damage is great, and even if you aren't dealing a lot of damage through those kinds of calls, Faris reduces their bravery to 0 and then hits them, so you're still getting the breaks anyway. As long as you're able to weather the damage they might deal to you in that time, you should be fine with Faris, even despite elemental lockout content. I quite like the idea of this kind of content because it makes you have to be a bit more creative about the ways in which you go about that content if you're not going to carry that kind of character on their own. And then finally, Lukiyasha says, I'm willing to use 100 tickets or so to try and get Faris. Faris for a long while has been designated Call Duty with her ability to cleanse enemy buffs and inflict her own debuffs. With her rework, she gets more modern damage output, and her FR is actually really good in the right situations. If you're able to maintain a large amount of debuffs on the enemy, have some off-turn damage and they don't resist water, you can reach some really high numbers. However, despite her potential, the character I'm more interested here is Agrias, who I already have fully built. She gets some great buffs to her kit, including an extension to Faded Molly, and as a character I've enjoyed using loads in the past due to her utility. So overall, even if I don't get Faris FR, she'll still be able to serve well as a call and then cleanse the debuff if and when I should need it. Agrias, honestly, for an LD only update, actually pretty fierce. Like, I do think, I'm not sure if I'd go gems to pull for her at this point, because gems really, in my eyes, should be reserved for BT characters, but she's got quite the glow up here. I will say that. For an LD only character, she does decent damage, she provides defensive auras, and more crowd control than you can shake a stick at. So I wouldn't say no to throwing a few tickets at Agrias if I didn't have her. So, like, and if you got Faris along the way, I think Faris is great. I actually really like this banner as a place to grab Tifa BT if you don't have it already. So now we ask the big question, of course, should you be pulling for Faris, or perhaps you're looking for Garnet BT and want something to throw resources at again? Well, I love all the characters that are on this banner, so I'm probably somewhat biased here, but I will try not to be for the purpose of this video. I still, even without bias, think Faris gets a pretty hefty glow up with this banner. Like, she's added another role to her roster of already being a solid debuffer and dispeller, and those two are a really nice combination anyway. by being a really strong off-turn damage dealer. And, you know, has a bit of uniqueness added in. We love a bit of uniqueness when it comes to these characters, by reducing bravery to 0 before any traps go off, so that you're dealing damage that's definitely going to break the enemy. She gets problematic when it comes to elemental lockouts, though. I will say that. In fact, so does Garnet, but in a very different... Well, actually, no, Garnet not so much, because Garnet can swap between 2 elements, so she's actually great for elemental lockouts. I don't know what I'm talking about here. She's actually great for it, because she can go with either water or thunder. Doesn't necessarily have to do both. Faris has 3 elements that she has to deal damage with, because her EX and the Soldier Trap hits for all 3 of those elements, and if the enemy resists even one of them, it's no damage, which is not ideal. There are ways around this, like we mentioned Charlotta, Kate Sith, Setzer, that kind of thing before, and that's very apparent. But a lot of people probably don't want to put the effort in to make Faris work when they could probably just chuck Tifa and a single target enchant, or a single element enchant, and just be done with it. I, however, love Faris, and the fact that she's an off-damage dealer means that that's a team composition I can really play around with and sink my teeth into. She works really well with core. There's a lot of fun to be had with Faris, but there is a lot that goes against her, at least for the next few months. But after that point, she actually becomes really good again, so I will quite happily pull for Faris here. I do also think that Agrias, if you don't have her, makes a great consolation prize. I'm not sure I'd pull on this banner for Agrias, because she is an LD only character, she doesn't have a BT or an FR, and there are other characters that we have that do really strong kind of, you know, damage mitigation through crowd control. I mean, everyone and their mother uses Raijin LD, for example. But she's still good, like, she's still very fabulous. She's got her HP regens, she's got some auras to the party. There's a lot to like about Agrias. If you happen to get her along the way to either Garnet or Faris, I'd be really happy about it. Garnet, I don't know if I would pull for now. I think that a lot of people who want Garnet probably have her by now. And if you're a newer player than either of the previous times that she's come out in the last 6 months, you might want to hold off and consider waiting for her FR to come around, because realistically, if you're going to use Garnet, you need the BT at this point. So if you're going to go for her, then maybe waiting for a time where she gets a slightly bigger update than what she gets here might be worthwhile to you. But she's still a really good character. Like, she's still got like a lot going for her. Her off-turn damage is still relevant to this day. It's not as sort of heavy as it once was, but there's a lot there to like. I think that this is a great place to try and get Tifa BT if you don't already have it, given that there's a great set of characters there in Faris and Agrias, and if you don't have Garnet BT, or if you have Garnet BT and need to pick up her LD for whatever reason, that's a great time to go for it as well. Honestly, I'm happy Garnet BT's returning, because now that we know that there's free pulls on this banner, that's another free pull for me towards Faris FR, so I'm happy about that. So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you ever so much for watching. Next on the list we have Dimensions in Transcendence 11 and Renoa coming up, and that's another character that's very hyped up at this point, and maybe even a reason for people not to want to pull on the banners that are currently available, because Renoa is just that damn powerful. So if you're wanting to learn more about that, stay tuned for the next video that we have on offer for Dissidia Opera Omnia, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on the other videos I might be making. And that's going to be it from me today, so thank you very much for joining me, and I shall see you next time, beautiful. Take care.